It is time for another best of 3 series in StarCraft 2, and what I got for you today is 2 professional players, and not just 2 regular professionals, I mean, if those even exist, but the very best when it comes to the Terran versus Terran matchup. Spawning in the top left corner of Paladino Terminal, one of the new maps that recently got added to the game, he is known as the red Terran player, and he is known as INnoVation. And his opponent, spawning all the way on the bottom right corner of the map, well, I say all the way, but this map is absolutely tiny, the current world champion of StarCraft 2, the guy with the blue Terran pieces, he is known as ByuN. Now real quick, right, I don't really think that ByuN needs any introduction. I mean, I've casted many games of him before, but for those of you that have been watching professional StarCraft 2 over the years, you probably have heard of INnoVation. I mean, INnoVation has been the most dominant player of StarCraft 2 of all time. Basically what that means is that maybe he has not won the most tournaments, but he's been the most dominant and most scary players of StarCraft 2 for the longest time. The funny thing is that while he was struggling in early Legacy of the Void before that, and after patch 3.8 just a few months ago, he's been on an absolute tear. And just so you know, right, I just looked it up, ByuN has actually been dominant for roughly 84 weeks. But INnoVation, and I just looked it up, he's actually the most dominant player of all time. He's been dominant for 198 weeks, which is insane. Like, that's, you know, nearly 2.5 times as many times as, or as many weeks rather, as ByuN, which is absolutely ludicrous. Regardless though, I don't want to go in depth on how exactly they calculate that, but just take it from me, INnoVation is incredible, and right now he's actually ranked just a little bit higher as ByuN is, as he's been doing extremely well over the last couple of months. Ever since they removed that tank drop shenanigans, that is exactly the time that INnoVation has gotten himself back at the very top of the scene. But anyways, let's have a quick look at both of these players' builds. So we do see a quick double gas here for INnoVation, a little bit of a later gas if I'm not mistaken here from ByuN, but we do have a reasonably setup, or a reasonable similar setup right here from ByuN, as well as his opponent. I mean, he's going to be opening up with a few Marines here in the earlier stages of the game, whereas INnoVation decides to open up with those double Reapers, and indeed, he's going to be scouting around here, trying to see if there could potentially be any kind of 3 Rex aggression going down, which is definitely something that ByuN is known for. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that this is, of course, a best of 3 series, meaning that in game number 1, I mean, you still got a little bit of leeway. You may as well go very aggressive and try out something a little bit more cheesy, but it looks like, at least for the moment, that is not going to be the case, as both players will be opening up with very safe builds here, going for that starport follow-up reasonably early on into the game, and we do indeed see that tech lab go down now as well on that barracks, so we may very well see the switch over here in just a little bit and get that juicy either siege tank production or potentially even the Reaper, or sorry, the what's it called, the Banshee play as well. Now, a little bit of a risky move there, beautiful control actually by INnoVation, trying to bait there for as long as possible, but eventually ByuN does not end up falling for that trick, and that Reaper that was trying desperately to jump up could not get another bomb off on top of that Widow Mine, and eventually it stays alive with one of those Reapers having to pay for that with its life. Now, the repair, of course, on that Widow Mine will keep it alive for a little while longer, and ByuN not having any additions right now just yet. He's going for that reactor right now. He's just gonna simply try and build up his Cyclone count, which is one of the strongest units right now in the earlier stages of Terran versus Terran in particular. Generally speaking, TVT does still transition towards that, like, marine tank style, which is what we so very well known throughout, like, the history of StarCraft 2, but there's definitely all kinds of weird early game openers right now that have been viable as of the recent patch changes in StarCraft 2, and indeed, we do see both players opening up with a Cyclone. We do see the quick Raven follow-up here as well. No Banshee play in this particular one, but going straight into the Raven. A risky move there, but nice little splitting there of ByuN as well, making sure that he does not take any additional splash damage. However, this expansion is running extremely low on HP, but I wonder, are there enough forces now for ByuN to finish this off? Sure, there is that auto turret, but eventually the cancel indeed does get forced. Micro back and forth though, trying to make sure that this Cyclone stays alive to the best of his ability. That one SCV trying to help out as well. The pickup, however, will be able to secure the kill, and even getting an additional Marine, and may even get himself another SCV there as well. Beautiful little bit of micro. This is what I always talk about, right? When you watch ByuN play, he gets more value out of his units than any other player in the world. Look at that. Last second pickup, not even done just yet. Still trying to get cheeky and potentially even bait some more auto turret usage right there out of that second Raven. Just trying to, you know, basically squeeze the most out of each and every one of those units, and that is really what ByuN is known for. Now, when it comes to his opponent, however, INnoVation is known to be an extremely and I really want to like hammer this down, an extremely mechanical player. This guy has some of the best macro in the world. I mean, look at his minerals right now, for example, right? His gas and minerals, it's hardly even going over 100, which is ridiculous because he's under a lot of pressure here, right? But regardless, ByuN is not done just yet. He's got that low cyclone still here. It does eventually get picked up. However, indeed, the auto turret there from that Raven doing a heck of a lot of damage, and with that siege tank coming out as well, I think ByuN may have overextended for just a little bit, as eventually all of his units do get cleaned up. Now, both players do indeed have their expansions going up at this point in time as well. The transfer of the SCVs already going down for ByuN. And as far as like the earlier game goes, I mean, sure, we saw some back and forth action, but this definitely could still be anyone's game. Of course, ByuN getting a slight upper hand there, just manages to kill a couple more units, but all things considered, I mean, this is playing right into INnoVation's hands, as the middle stages of the game is where Terran versus Terran becomes extremely mechanical. And Terran versus Terran, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, right? I play a lot of random on the ladder, and I'm not gonna lie, Terran versus Terran is one of the most difficult and one of the most mechanical matchups in the game. Ever since they removed the siege tank pickup, when it's actually sieged up, it has been like some very strategic back and forth movement with a lot of like doom drops into the main base, because the player that is attacking into a player that is sieged up in like a sieged up position can deal so much damage if they manage to do it accordingly. However, if sieged up tanks manage to get just a handful of shots off, they will be able to pick up that victory with relative ease. And here indeed we do see that auto turret trying to make its way into the main base, and while it does indeed get landed there, that Raven has to pay for it with its life, and ByuN picks up that drop. Or not rather a drop, well, I guess it would technically be considered a drop with an auto turret, but he does pick up that Raven very handily, not taking any damage whatsoever. And here we go, ByuN is trying to start moving across the map now. He's adding on those additional barracks here as well, and of course on the other end of the map we do already see those buildings down, and INnoVation is going to try and build himself as many units as he possibly can. Now notice, right, he's playing relatively laid back here. He's just sort of letting his opponent come at him, and he does have that siege tank right here in the main base. He's going to start moving that over, because this is a scary position to fight into. There's a ton of Vikings out for ByuN at this point in the game, and there's really very little anti-air at this point for INnoVation, meaning that ByuN is going to be able to get a lot of additional vision here on those siege tanks, because of course they can actually shoot further than they can see. So getting that air superiority is huge. Now here we do see the stim forward from INnoVation, trying to get whatever pickups he can. However, the siege tank in the back is already sieged up, is forced to lift up and get on out of there. However, there we indeed do see those auto turrets go down, and they do significant amounts of damage. Siege tank targeted down, immediately does get taken care of as well. And while INnoVation does still have quite a lot of siege tanks, at least for now, this is a scary position as ByuN is leapfrogging his siege tanks forward. Look at that movement there, starting to get into a really good position, and right now he can start firing at that orbital command. Very tricky. The scan going down here from INnoVation, revealing this entrenched position here from ByuN, and I wonder if there is indeed enough. He's gonna start target firing down that first siege tank. However, the damage is absolutely ludicrous. Trying to move onwards, however, and the Marines that came from the side there eventually do clean up all of the siege tanks that were in that position, and that was actually some of the best control there that you could have gone for INnoVation, not losing that command center either. So he's definitely not out of that game yet, but you can really see, right, one little misstep on one of those siege tanks and they will get taken care of. However, if you've got them in a correct position and they manage to do the splash damage to those Marines, very quickly the tables can be turned, as they do ridiculous amount of units, or ridiculous amounts of damage to pretty much all of the units in this game. A nice little bit of scouting here from ByuN. Will he be able to see these medevacs? It looks like he can't. Another Marine right here at the front, also not quite seeing these double dropships that are coming in, and indeed INnoVation is gonna drop him in this nice little bit of dark area. I mean, this is a, you know, a bit of like a safe location, and it looks like he may very well try his very best and skim forward. Does split up one of those Marines to try and get some additional damage, decides to drop right on top of the siege tanks here in the front, does manage to get it as well, but the thing is that these medevacs cannot quite pick up anymore with this many Vikings up in the air, and eventually all of these end up fighting, but not without you know, taking a significant amount of these SCVs with them as well. 7 of them end up falling down, and that is exactly where the supply advantage gets in favor of INnoVation. Look at that. All of a sudden, this man here is actually quite significantly ahead. However, like I said, this is Terran versus Terran. One misstep could still easily cost you the game, and while this Liberator does get found here eventually, there's very little units to deal with it right now for INnoVation, and he is moving his entire army across the map. Of course, Vikings still trying to patrol here, take out any kind of dropships that might potentially be coming in as well. And a couple of these Marines here eventually will be able to figure this out as well. And, well, there we do indeed see all of the forces from INnoVation starting to make their way across the map. And look at these fights, right? These are very tricky. I mean, sure, these are 5 siege tanks versus only 3 here, but this could still easily go in favor of ByuN just because he is the defensive player and he gets to decide the pace of this battle. And of course, these Vikings still giving him the air superiority. It looks like actually ByuN is even going to start stemming forward here. All of these siege tanks are unsieged. This means that all of a sudden, all of these siege tanks will end up falling. Sloppy mistake here from INnoVation, not responding in time at all. And while he is fighting reasonably well, and he's of course, in the meantime, you know, being staggered right here by that one Liberator in the main, a lot of his forces do get taken care of. And while he does deal with the aggression on the other side of the map, and he also sets himself up for that third base third base economy. I mean, look at the supply counts all of a sudden, right? ByuN slowly grabbing himself way back into those game. And I mean, look at that. I mean, that siege tank pickoff right here was pretty crazy. Just the one Liberator in the main base, giving him so much additional leeway. And while I don't know how many... Yeah, a couple of SCVs did end up falling there, but I don't know exactly how many. I mean, that fight definitely in favor there of ByuN. That one Liberator paying for it with its life, but definitely getting the value out of it as well. And ByuN going for the Doom Drop into the main now as well. There's not that many medevacs here, but you gotta keep in mind that the siege tanks are now in position. And with this many Marines and siege tanks sieged up in your main base, this is an extremely difficult engagement to take. And while INnoVation did secure himself that economy lead, he could not deal with all of the units in his main base, and he did get taken care of from the inside out. I hope you get to see though how tricky this matchup is, because here we are on game number 2. This is going to be on Newkirk Precinct, but I mean, you gotta keep in mind, we have got like full observer view, right? We can see everywhere on the map, whereas these guys are just working with limited vision, so you need to make sure that you're balancing the amount of energy that you have on your command center, making sure that you got enough scans available in case any cloaked units come out, but also to make sure that you can keep track rather of all of your opponent's movement, and just to make sure that you're not going to be taking any unnecessary damage. Going for a Doom Drop right there from ByuN was only doable because he found out about his opponent's third base, and he could have sort of calculated after taking that initial engagement as well, where he managed to take out all of those siege tanks. He just sort of calculated that it more than likely was going to be a safe bet with most of INnoVation's units across the map to just simply Doom Drop into the main base and siege up all of the tanks right there. Very scary move, very risky move, but you really have to like admire how tricky it is to make that decision, right? Because if there would have been like 2 siege tanks sieged up in the main base of INnoVation, that would have been all she wrote. But ByuN, knowing very well how much economy you can get away with, does indeed open up this best of 3 series with a 1-0 lead. Very, very nicely done. Very, very tricky. And I mean, that sloppy mistake there from INnoVation just sort of cost him the game. While he did manage to clean up the aggression in the main at the same time, I mean, losing your main army at the front, definitely not what you are looking for in that series. And well, he's gonna have to come back here. I wonder if ByuN got anything tricky in mind here. He's actually gonna be opening up with a single Reaper straight into an expansion, it looks like, or he may very well try and do so in just a little bit. I mean, he's still saving up a lot of resources. I wonder if that is going to be his plan. Yeah, indeed, we do see that command center go down on the low ground, and of course this is much greedier, but the thing is, his opponent's actually doing the exact same thing. The thing is obviously that, I mean, he's got a little bit of leeway, right? He's got himself a 1-0 lead, so that means that he can be a little bit more tricky. Now, of course, INnoVation, the macro machine that he is not going to fall for that. Will be able to follow this up with a factory here himself as well, and he's getting that reactor on the barracks to start double pumping those Marines if he so decides to do. And of course, this does turn out to be a little bit of like a less economy-focused match, whereas in the previous one we saw both players making a lot more tech-heavy buildings and getting up to those tech labs and starports and whatnot off of just a single base. It looks like both players are indeed opting for a little bit more economy in game number 2, and most of these decisions are made either because of the size of a map, or just because of the score of the series, or because of, like, you know, the rush distances of the map as well. I mean, if you gotta keep in mind here, moving from this map all the way to the other end is significantly more tricky than it was on Paladino Terminal, and more importantly, there's this beautiful ramp leading down from the natural to the low ground, meaning that a siege tank right here can actually shoot like 2 stories down, and it's very tricky to engage into. Now, of course, we do see that early Widowmine play here for INnoVation. He's going to be following this up with a starport as well, but both players have already got those command centers finished up in the low ground, and are going to be able to start mining from that very, very shortly. Once more, that single Cyclone opener right here from ByuN. Actually, in the previous one, he did decide to go for a couple more Cyclones very shortly after, but this time around, going straight up into the tech lab while double producing those Marines, and he's basically just saying like, hey, you know, I may be getting a little bit tricky here in the earlier stages of the game, but I don't want to, you know, get any kind of crazy mid-game strategies down. I'm just simply going to try and get my Marine siege tank focused army out, and I expect him to go ahead and start transitioning into that very, very shortly once he's got the resources here to start affording one of those siege tanks right here as well. And there, indeed, we do see the first siege tank come down. He's also got a Viking coming in, very, very safe to deal with any kind of potential Banshee play from his opponent. And if you have a quick look at both players' vision, yeah, you can see like not a whole lot of vision for the time being for either of these, but they've very well known that the options are there to try and potentially get some damage in. Now, of course, INnoVation does have 6 Marines here, as well as a single Widowmine that he made earlier, and while this Viking will be able to spot it, the boost there into the main base could be a little bit tricky. Of course, this is a very difficult engagement here, of course. I mean, that medevac will be able to heal up a lot of those units, and with the Widowmine lowered into the ground, it's gonna indeed take out one of the Marines there as well, but I mean, that medevac will not be able to get on out of there, and while there were less units for the... That was so cute. That was so cute. I love that. While there were less units there initially for ByuN, he picks that up with relative ease. Beautiful little move. Now, of course, Vikings now, when landed, one of the changes that they made to the Viking is that right now, when they're landed, they deal bonus damage to mechanical units, such as, for example, that Widowmine. In the past, that would have taken significantly more shots, but that was totally legit way of dealing with that one burrowed Widowmine, and with that second Viking joining in, picking up these potential dropships is going to be like significantly easier. Now, ByuN, in the meanwhile, has got himself a very solid amount of unit producing structures out, whereas of course we see something similar here for INnoVation, but he has decided that he's gonna go for a much earlier 3rd command center. So we should be able to see some aggression coming out of ByuN here as soon as he realizes that this is the case. He is hunting for that Viking right now as well, and actually he may very well have picked up one just now. And of course the range on these units is significant, and one of the Vikings of ByuN has to pay for that with its life, as it did overextend for just a little bit. Now the Cyclone also out on the map, trying to pick up any potential Vikings that may be overextending from INnoVation, but it looks like that's not going to be the case here. Now, for the earlier stages of the game, there we do indeed see that massive scan go down, figuring out exactly what it is that INnoVation opponent is going for. But for the earlier stages of the game, we definitely do want to see some aggression coming out here from ByuN. I mean, if you let your opponent just simply have that 3rd command center, you're gonna start falling behind in economy very, very shortly. And of course, INnoVation can use this for mule drops, but he can also get additional scans out, giving him a lot more vision just a little while later. And there indeed, we do see that 3rd orbital command finishing up, and he will be able to start dropping the mules at the natural now very, very quickly. And look at all of the production that he's adding on right now, right? Lots of barracks, lots of engineering base, gonna be able to start double upgrading, and he's also getting quite aggressive now with these Vikings across the map, picking up a couple of units at a time. And while the supply lead definitely is going to be in favor here of ByuN, just simply because he's been producing a lot of units here for a longer time, he does not have nearly as much economy as his opponent has, and he's also only got a single upgrade going down. Really what INnoVation is looking for right now is time. If he manages to get more time here, he's gonna be able to get a significant economy lead. Like, you can already see right now that his income will go significantly in favor once this 3rd base start mining, but the supply and the army is definitely in favor here of ByuN. Look at that, 33 army supply here for INnoVation, 57 for ByuN. But once more, we got this siege tank problem going on, and it will all come down to the engagement. Will he be able to defend against all of these units? Of course, INnoVation does not want to just simply bring all of his forces to the natural, or to the 3rd base rather, because he will leave a lot of his other forces vulnerable. And there we do indeed see that sensor tower finished up, giving him a lot of additional vision. But I wonder if there is indeed going to be enough now, because there has to be some pressure here from ByuN. I mean, you can already see that INnoVation is starting to close the gap here, and with this massive amount of drops potentially coming in here very shortly. I mean, that sensor tower will be able to spot these units with relative ease. It looks like while INnoVation does manage to clean up that cyclone, I'm starting to be a little bit worried here for ByuN. Where is he headed here? Of course, he could be heading towards the natural with this dropship, right? That is an option. This dropship, or these dropships rather, will get shot on by a single missile turret, and while there is a siege tank here in position to start shooting at it as well, here we go with the doom drop straight into the natural. A very unusual position. The siege tanks are desperately trying to siege up the stim marines coming in. However, there are a ton of siege tanks, and with all of these marines all of a sudden being able to shoot at all of those units, I mean, look at that. That was a crazy move there by ByuN, grabbing himself a significant supply lead, and while he is sort of stuck here in this location, he managed to clean up a lot. Now, of course, he is still scanning, trying to see if the units that were defending the third base location are gonna unsiege as well, and he's gonna be able to start dealing damage here from the high ground, trying to target fire down that siege tank, and he does indeed end up getting it, and with over 30 SCVs falling here in just a matter of seconds, ByuN is gonna be able to get himself a beautiful lead here. What a risky move, dropping into that natural with a 1-0 lead, right? But that is what you get in a best-of-3 series. You are able to take risks like that. Noticing that your opponent did not have spot-on defenses in the natural, just a single missile turret and siege tank to defend there, turns out not to be enough, and that third base indeed does get taken care of there as well, and INnoVation is back to basics now, with ByuN having a significant supply lead here, as well as getting himself a third command center. What a tricky move. Very difficult. I mean, if that doesn't show you how tricky Terran versus Terran is, I don't know what was. I mean, come on. He scooted all the way around that center tower, trying to get himself in there, and then boosting himself straight into the natural. That was beautiful. Absolutely brilliantly played there from ByuN, showing why he is the current world champion of SC2, as he is not to be messed with. His Terran versus Terran is looking extremely strong, and while statistically speaking, he's got a slightly lower win rate than INnoVation, he definitely is a force to be reckoned with, because, I mean, he's not afraid to take risks, right? And I would say that's probably one of INnoVation's weaknesses. He plays so mechanical in many of these scenarios. Sure, he's going for dropships right now, but I wonder if there are even remotely enough units now at the front to deal with all of these. I mean, sure, there are a couple of siege tanks here, but all of these marines splitting up brilliantly, ByuN doing ByuN things, making sure that he doesn't really take a whole lot of splash damage. Eventually, all of those units will indeed get taken care of. Command center ends up falling, and once those siege tanks start moving forward, this is going to be a very tricky fight. In the meantime, though, INnoVation does still have a lot of units here to try and target fire with, but look at the production here from ByuN. They're simply getting so much more. Medevac does get target fire down, and with the siege tanks in position in the natural, ByuN is gonna end up taking this best-of-3 series with a 2-0 fashion. Beautiful play here by ByuN. Definitely playing this out brilliantly. I mean, it's so difficult and so tricky, and he's definitely the best in the business right now. Whereas INnoVation, at the very least in this series, is gonna have to eat this loss. I hope that you enjoyed watching this series. If you did, make sure you hit that like button down below, and while you're at it, do also make sure you hit that subscribe button so you get a notification as soon as I upload more. And other than that, if you haven't already, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Links are in the description. I want to thank you for watching. Have an amazing day. Do not forget to smile, alright? And I will see you in the next one.